Coming up on The Cost of Living.
Is this crazy what we're doing? But I think for us, it will be nice to have options rather than sort of feeling like we have none here.
Kara Howlett goes to the online mortgage calculator every day, but she can't make the numbers add up. So she's moving, and not just across the street. Hi, I'm Paul Haverstrood. Welcome to The Cost of Living. If we want to throw everything at the wall to help make houses more affordable, and imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, are there ideas out there that we could steal from other countries? Also today, remember when Sinatra sang, "Regrets, I've had a few"? That was about doing it his way. But he could have been talking about what you buy when you're impulse shopping. Up first, a world powered by solar energy has been just on the horizon forever. And it keeps not happening. Until, well, maybe now. Simon Angus spends half his time in Prince George working as an engineer. The other half, he's on Vancouver Island. He loves sailing and engineering. So 5 years ago, he combined the two. He quit his job at an oil refinery to build a boat, an all-electric, solar-powered catamaran.
It was a great sailing boat. We had it in BC. Well, it's still in BC. It's on the islands, and it sailed amazingly. Apart from the solar sucked, fundamentally. The solar just didn't perform as advertised.
The solar cells didn't crank out enough electricity to power his electric boat, and the panels were easily damaged. Simon figured he could do better.
We spent 18 months in R&D to try and encapsulate the cells into a fiberglass composite laminate. And we found about 300 ways how not to do it. Luckily, we did find the way to do it, and now we have a product which we have orders for different size yachts, and basically we can't keep up.
He's now in the business of marine solar, making solar panels for boats. The ones he's come up with are bendy. They can wrap around a boat's hull. They're also tough enough to walk on, so you can put them on the deck. They don't have enough juice to run a yacht's engines, but they can power the lights, fridge, and everything else.
For boat owners, not running a diesel generator at anchor is huge.
Why?
So noise, smell, pollution, vibrations on the boat. So you're enjoying a couple of cocktails in the evening, and you got this generator banging away. Where with today's technology, you don't need to do that. You can have enough solar generation to run the air conditioning, cool the boat down, and not have to run a diesel generator.
His little company, Open Waters Design, has done about 10 boats so far. But the big prize isn't marine solar. It's on land. Refrigeration trucks. They use diesel generators to keep stuff cold. North America has about 500,000 refrigerated trailers. They burn about 7 billion liters of diesel a year. Simon says wrapping the trailers in solar panels could replace all of that. And his dreams? They don't stop there.
RVs, overlander vehicles, golf carts, big military applications in the future, aerospace applications in the future, and definitely as technology increases, the applications can just keep going up.
Anywhere you can think of to put solar, Simon thinks it can go there. Solar is on the cusp of a quiet revolution. Costs are coming down fast, and people are dreaming big about what could be. Only, we've heard this kind of talk before, that solar was about to be the next big thing.
People have been saying that for 70 years. It was 1954. The New York Times had a front page article where solar was ready to take over the world.
Greg Nemeth understands why someone might be skeptical about solar. He's a professor at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where he studies technological change in the energy world. He says the story of solar
There's been a lot of high promise, some disappointment, and 2 or 3 really significant false dawns. And so I think for a lot of people, it's kind of like, yeah, but solar's been around for a long time and it's never gotten to be anything more than a fringe kind of niche thing.
So why would now be any different? Well, get out your sunglasses, because Greg says solar is getting so cheap.
You don't need to go too far out to see it really eating everything. So beating fossil fuels, beating coal, it's already done. Now it's beating natural gas for electricity, and then beating oil for powering transportation with batteries and electric vehicles. And then there's probably uses that we haven't really thought about, where once you have cheap solar, you can start doing all kinds of unexpected things with it.
So how far away is this? Well, right now solar makes up about 6% of global electricity generation, but it's growing, around 30% a year. That means solar generation is doubling every 2 to 3 years. So
we'll be getting up to like 50% in the next 10 years.
Yeah, he says that by 2035, solar will make up half of the world's electricity generation. Solar is growing exponentially, especially in places like Germany, Japan, China. And the more that's installed, the more costs come down, technology gets better, solar gets even cheaper. So 6% doubles to 12%, then it's 24%. 10 years from now, 48%. That might be hard to believe, but
it's probably similar if you talk to telecom executives in 1985 about whether cell phones would ever play a role. And they would probably similarly talk about, yeah, people might put them in their cars, but we'll always have landlines. And solar looks the same way.
Can solar really keep growing exponentially? Well, stuff that could slow it down is already showing up, like land use. All these solar panels need to go somewhere. Will they gobble up too much prime farmland?
So you need about 1% of Earth's kind of usable land to produce all the electricity the world needs. And so that's a lot in some ways, but it's a lot less than, say, the 30% or so we use for agriculture. It's more on par with what we use for golf courses in Canada and the US.
Another big question, maybe the original one for solar: what happens when the sun doesn't shine, like at night? Greg says here, technology is coming up with answers. Batteries are getting cheaper fast. And the power grid of the future may not look exactly like the one we have today.
If you start to make the system a bit more flexible by using solar that's not just central, but distributed on people's rooftops and things like that, by using the storage that's inherent in electric vehicles that people have and having those allow for two-way charging and discharging back to the grid, some more transmission. So if you have a system that builds more flexibility into it, then the firming cost becomes something that's very manageable.
By firming costs, he means the backup power that firms up the grid when the sun doesn't shine. And we'll still need some other kinds of power generation: wind, natural gas, nuclear. That could be expensive, but Greg says solar will still make electricity cheaper than it is now. So yes, solar will have to clear some hurdles. But let's allow ourselves to dream. What could we do in a world of boundless cheap energy? Anything that takes power, so almost everything, would cost less. We could desalinate ocean water, fight climate change by pulling CO2 out of the air, provide power to countries that don't have it now. That kind of blue sky stuff is a long way away. But in the here and now, solar costs are falling. In the last 10 years, they're down 85%. Solar's exponential growth is being driven by economics. And if the money makes sense,
like, why not? What is it that stops it from happening? And as you go through the list of things, none of them seem like deal breakers. I just have a hard time seeing what stops it.
could solar really make up half of the world's power generation in 10 years? Nothing is a sure thing, except, the sun rising in the east. On your Radio and by podcast, this is The Cost of Living. I'm Paul Haberstrood. Parks and Recreation fans will remember that once a year, Tom and Donna spend a day, spending.
Clothes.
Treat yourself.
Fragrances.
Treat yourself.
Massages.
Treat yourself.
Mimosas.
Treat yourself.
Hey, buying what you want can feel good. But in this economy, with our debt levels, Ellis Cho gets some advice for curbing the impulse to impulse shop.
I would wake up in the morning and I would think about shopping, thinking about what to buy next.
Christina Mijas loves fashion. She would shop till she dropped.
Anytime I had like a break at work, I would be online shopping or scrolling Instagram.
Clothes, makeup, shoes. If she liked it, she bought it.
It feels like Christmas when a package comes in.
And Christina is not alone.
Come along with me to impulse purchase a designer vintage handbag.
So I know I technically said that I was going to try and spend less money and do less impulsive purchases. That's going out the window because I walked into the cutest store today. Oh my gosh, yes, they were kind of expensive.
It's that dopamine hit, and that's what's getting a lot of people in trouble.
Kelly Ho is a certified financial planner in Vancouver. She says impulse shopping, buying something you didn't set out to buy, happens to a lot of us, even financial planners.
I love Costco, and I admit to this. Like, I go in to buy things, I come out with a sweater. I don't need another sweater.
Canadian household debt levels are at an all-time high. According to Equifax, Canadians are carrying an average credit card balance of $4,300. That's up nearly 14% from a year ago. And $20 here, $20 there doesn't help. So if you want to resist temptation, Kelly says, make a list before you head out.
So when I have a list, then I'm focused on what I need to get. And it does keep me from wanting to wander off to other areas of the store that I don't need to be in. So I'm in and I'm out. All those notepads we get in the mail from our neighborhood realtors, put them to use, right?
And if you have a hard time saying no to those fresh baked pretzels at the mall, walk away fast. Give yourself 10 minutes. Chances are you'll forget about it. But if you just can't, then Kelly says you need to build it into your budget.
Who am I to tell you to not impulse buy? I think all of us, whether we admit it to it or not, we will do it. So why don't we actually build that into the plan so that we know we're doing it responsibly?
But Christina Mijas wasn't being responsible. She was a high earner, living paycheck to paycheck, with $120,000 in student loan debt. Retail therapy helped her feel good about herself. Until one day,
I bought a pair of boots that cost more than my rent.
Excuse me?
It was just this moment of conscious self-sabotage that I was so cognizant of at that time that I was like, okay, you need to change, because if you don't, then you're gonna be stuck like this forever or worse.
So the first thing she did?
I think I Googled how to stop shopping.
That's where she discovered several financial influencers and started following their advice. Now she has a budget, financial goals, and has her own set of rules when she shops. She buys higher quality stuff that lasts longer and thinks hard about the why before she buys.
So if it's not a hell yes, then it's a no.
In 6 years, Christina paid off her student loan and is debt-free. As for those boots,
oh, I sold them. They're gone.
for the cost of living, I'm Ellis Cho.
This is The Cost of Living. I'm Paul Havershrud. So, Jen, the feds just changed some rules to make it easier to get a mortgage.
The government is loosening restrictions around 30-year mortgages and doing some other stuff to make it easier for people to buy houses.
The finance minister, Chrystia Freeland, she called these changes the boldest mortgage reforms in decades.
And fair to say, the pressure is on the government right now to do something, to be bold. The average house price in Canada is now close to $700,000.
So with that in mind, the question is the government being bold enough to help with affordability? Like, if we're in this break glass in case of emergency situation, Jen, are we trying everything?
Well, we're trying a lot, but there are some other ideas out there.
Like?
Well, let me start by telling you about a woman I met recently. Her name is Cara Howlett. She lives in Cochrane, which is just outside of Calgary, and I drove out to visit her at her home.
Yeah, so this is, they have the little attached garage. It's not very big. As you can see, the car takes up most of the space.
Her family of 4 has been renting here for the last couple of years. Before this, they owned their own place, but they sold it during the pandemic and moved to BC. When they came back to Alberta, house prices had gone up, so they thought, maybe we'll just rent for a while and see what happens.
But what happened was house prices just kept going up.
And in the meantime, their townhouse started feeling pretty squishy. They've got 2 kids, a 9-year-old boy and a 6-year-old girl, and they share a room.
It just causes a lot of problems with sleep because they're constantly waking each other up, and timing bedtime and all of that is definitely tricky. It's doable. I mean, we're in a safe home. It's a nice home. It's not, lots of people have to have kids that share rooms, but we know that it won't last long term.
So it sounds like they're looking for a bigger place.
Yeah, they are. They really want a 3-bedroom place. And it doesn't matter whether it's a house or a townhouse or a condo. And her husband does earn $100,000 a year, but even still, that one salary just isn't enough.
I mean, if you think back to like 10, 15 years ago, that would have been plenty.
Yeah, but house prices have doubled since then. And Cara says they really hit a turning point a while back. She was looking through the listings and noticed that the same townhouse they used to own is up for sale, but it's $200,000 more than they paid for it 5 years ago. And that was the moment that they thought,
I don't know that we can make this work. And we had felt that way before, but I think that was just sort of the clincher moment in our minds where it was like, this is crazy, and we're sort of surrounded by all these changes in the housing market, and what does that mean for our family?
So what does that mean for her family?
well, they've decided to move to England.
Because houses are cheaper there?
Not really, but Cara's husband has UK citizenship, and there's a program in Britain that helps middle-class people to buy homes. It's called shared ownership.
And this is?
Well, nonprofit housing associations or town councils in the UK, they own a lot of houses, and you can buy a share of them. Ren Thomas teaches housing policy at Dalhousie University, and she explains how it works.
Like, you can put down usually between 25 and 75%. And then whatever you can't access through a mortgage or through your own savings would be provided through that housing association or the council, like basically the landlord.
So buyers own a percentage of the house or the flat and then pay rent on the rest. And that rent is based on your income. Then over time,
you buy an increasing proportion of your share, as they call it. And so the more shares you buy, your rent decreases.
So this is a way for people to get on the housing ladder even if they can't afford a big down payment.
Yeah, and the idea has been around in the UK for decades. It was designed for key workers, so nurses, teachers, who would find it hard to afford a house in a city like London. So you can make up to £90,000 and still qualify.
And this gives you somewhere to live. You own the place, kind of. There's some stability there, though, and you can't get evicted if they want to turn your rental into condos.
And you earn equity on the share of the house that you own. So if you sell, you get the value of that equity. But I should add that it's not a perfect program. There are issues with it.
What kind?
Well, you have to pay 100% of the maintenance costs of the property, even though you're only a part owner. And then some people say it can be hard to sell these houses.
Does Kara know about all this?
She knows, and she has a backup plan. There is also a home buyer's grant in the UK, which is pretty generous. But either way, moving to the UK, it's a leap.
And a lot of times we question it, like, is this crazy what we're doing? But I think for us, I mean, really, it will be nice to have options.
And here, Canada, where she's from, she just feels like she's out of moves.
Pretty much. Even though, I mean, we've seen so many ideas being thrown at the wall, the tax-free first home savings account, all kinds of cities, loosening up the zoning laws so we can get more supply on the market.
But stuff like that takes a while to actually matter, and time right now matters. Like, yeah, maybe this works for housing in 5 years or 10, things look better. But if you're Kara right now, that's really not doing much for you.
And that's why some housing experts like Ren Thomas say maybe what we need right now is some more outside-the-box thinking.
Especially in a time of a crisis, a lot of people consider that we've been in a housing crisis for a few years now. So these are typically the times when we look to other countries for solutions.
Well, what about something like shared ownership? Does she think that could work here?
I did ask her that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could have something like that here. I mean, theoretically, the only difference is that instead of you getting the entire mortgage from a bank, you would be getting part of the mortgage from, let's say, a municipality or a housing organization. So let's say a nonprofit maybe, or another group that is willing to kind of sponsor that part of the mortgage.
And there are a few shared equity housing programs in Canada now, but some housing advocates say it's time to ramp these ideas up and for government to play a larger role in non-market housing.
Non-market being?
Public housing or co-op housing, social housing. Carolyn Weitzman is a housing expert with the University of Toronto. She says Canada used to be more into this kind of thing. Like up until the 1980s, as much as 25% of all new housing built every year was non-market. But it really fell off after that.
So where are we at now?
Non-market housing makes up about 4% of all of Canada's housing stock.
Just to give a contrast, in many other countries, it'll hover around 20%. Certainly, France's targets are around 20%. The Netherlands, Austria, Switzerland. So it's really low in Canada.
And if we wanted to get that number higher, what would that take?
I'm going to surprise you here, Paul, and say more money.
Shocking.
And some of that is happening. The feds have committed to another $1 billion for the Affordable Housing Fund. And this summer, it created a $1.5 billion co-op housing development fund.
So for a long time, housing was really just left up to the free market. But now we're kind of seeing the market is kind of broken. So is part of the fix government stepping in and like taking a bigger role in housing?
I think that idea is starting to bubble up here in Canada, but it wouldn't necessarily be right for people like Kara and her family, and it's not going to happen fast enough. Her kids are getting bigger every day. They've decided they want to live near family, so that means here or England. And right now,
if we stayed, I just really don't know what we would do. We can stay renting here as long as we can, but then what?
Yeah. You're going to have kids with little English accents now.
I know. Yeah.
You're willing to live with that, though.
Yeah, I can survive that.
Well, toodle pip to Kara then.
It's not the worst thing in the world.
No, it's not. Thanks, Jen.
Thank you.
That's all for the show. The Cost of Living is based in Calgary. The show is produced by Daniel Nerman, Ellis Cho, and Jennifer Keene, with help from Caroline Ferris. I'm Paul Habertrud. Thanks for listening.